Hello, my name is Philip Wiedenheft. I am the writer, director, editor, actor, kind of all-around filmmaker of the movie Straitjacket. And I wanted to do a commentary because I had made the film for $10,000 to $15,000, somewhere in that range. And for anyone that knows anything about film production, they know that that is a very small number. And especially with the film that we made, it's quite a big movie. It's not just people in a room, so it's a big movie, and I've had a lot of questions about how we did it. So I thought it would be nice for my own memory and for anyone else who wanted some advice or some tips on how to do something like this. I thought it would be good. So I am recording this, even if no one ever listens to it. That's fine. But hopefully someone down the line finds it and finds it useful. So I'm going to try and record it so that you don't have to necessarily be watching it along while I'm talking. It'll be useful if you are, of course. But if not, hopefully this works also as a kind of podcast, and you can kind of just generally listen. And I'll try and speak as broadly as possible throughout. So that's the idea. So with all that preamble and setup, I will sync the movie up. So I will put a mark, some kind of noise in there. For anyone that is doing so. So if you are watching the movie and want to sync and watch along, I will count down here in a second. For any of you who aren't, just, stay tuned, listen along. We'll have fun. All right, so for those watching along, you should be pushing play in 3, 2, 1. Play. Okay. Blackness. No. All right, so I think the first thing I wanted to talk about is the opening of the movie, which was, I think, one of the deciding factors in the camera that we chose, which is always a big thing when you're making a movie. So I knew that we were going to have in darkness. It was going to be low light, we weren't going to have lights out in the woods or very many. So yeah, so what we did was we got a camera. That was kind of the deciding factor. We needed a camera that could do slow motion, high frame rate, still in 4K, which is what we were going to be shooting in, and in low light. So that was sort of the major thing that was our guiding force. So what we ended up with was the Panasonic GH5. So we're going over now. There's a bunch of dissolves. My theory about cameras is that the body of the camera does not matter as much as, no offense to the cinematographers out there, but the body of the camera, the actual model that you're using does not, really matter as much as I think a lot of people will lead you to believe. I think what's more important is good lenses and a good photographer. And if you have those things, whatever camera you have, they will find a way to make it look good. If you have the right amount of those tools are more important. So you can have a Canon 5D or whatever, from 10 years ago, and people made movies that look good on those cameras. So I would say, first things first, like, you need a camera that can do the practical things that the movie requires, but also, like, don't feel like you need to go out and rent the new Arri or the new Red or whatever it is that's out there right now that seems really exciting, but it's very expensive. And truthfully, I don't think people care that much. Filmmakers do, obviously, and cinematographers do, but and you want the movie to look good, but like you can have a crappy looking movie if the acting's good and the story's good. That's the most important thing. You should care about that more. So that's my first advice on cameras. So what do we got? All right, here. Oh yeah. So here's me. I am laying down. For those of you not watching, I'm about to vomit. The vomit was a mixture of things I don't actually know. Our prop man, Boone, he conjured up this mixture of stuff that all sounded good when like in separate ingredients. Those all sounded fine. The problem was when you mix them together. You're like, oh, crackers are good, Gatorade's good, meat is good, but you don't want to put those things together. And that's what I did. And there was a couple times where a couple takes where I'm very close to actually vomiting because I gagged a couple times. But more importantly, I grew up listening to commentaries all the time, and one of the major ones that influenced me or seemed to be the most practical of advice was Christopher Nolan's for Following, his debut movie, the one he made on weekends with friends, very much the same way I made this film. And the word of advice that he had was that he started the movie with voiceover and not a lot of scenes with dialogue between actors. And the reason he did that was because he wanted the audience to get invested. He knew that the sound wasn't going to be, studio level. So he was like, I got to get them hooked, visually, for a while before we let any like dirty sound get in the way. So that was sort of that mentality led me to this opening that is, extended. I don't think there's any real dialogue for the first 13-ish minutes of the movie, which I'm proud of, outside of the occasional help and no and anything, but there's not really any conversations. And and that was by design. That was also part of the design of the movie in terms of keeping the character isolated for story purposes, but also very practically. Like, I knew I was going to be acting in it, so it was going to be easier just to have me be there with my camera guy or a sound guy, and that be that. So that was sort of the idea, was like, okay, well, what's a story that can keep me alone a lot and not speaking much, but on the move and be active and, that kind of thing. That was sort of the idea behind that. And, so lack of momentum, I would say momentum was the key factor in this film. As I was making it, that was kind of the word I used for everything. I was just very afraid of people getting bored. And that's sort of what I've run into a lot when I'm watching very early independent movies from friends or from, I used to be a screener for a film festival, and I would watch a lot of independent movies, and pacing was always for me at least, was always the real killer. And so it was really important to me that this movie just moved fast. And, you can, do a lot worse than killing someone in the first 5 minutes. Right now, by the way, I'm shooting. I just did the shot where I shoot the bottle, think I hear something, and am first alerted that maybe something's happened out in the distance. Now, the way this was cut for the longest time was that you only heard her screaming, and it wasn't entirely clear. I think she said he's been shot, sort of that idea, but you did not actually see anything of Wyatt, the character, and the actual, blood, the actual body. And it was a late decision, but I realized it was so smart to like that quick cutaway because it just made things clear. And I realized that I initially thought, oh, maybe it'll be cool to be ambiguous and you won't even, maybe nothing actually did happen or whatever, something like that. I think that was my stupid thought process. But in the edit, I realized like, no, clarity is more important. Clarity and momentum. Those were kind of the key things here, knowing that there was a lot of setup and payoff in the script. So that was really where I was at, was making sure all the pieces matched and that everything flowed, because this was about a character who was ostensibly going to be on the run and on the go for the entire movie. So that was very much, the ethos of the film was we cannot bore people. So I'm running right now. The shot that is about to come up is I'm running up a hill and I'm about to go running through a cornfield, and we shot this stuff on a Ronin. Just once, most of it I think this stuff is on a 50 lens. We shot most of the movie on prime 50 and 28 lenses. That was just what ended up being nice for us. But okay, so a scene like this where I'm running. Now, a major movie would probably have tracks laid out or some elaborate crane or something like that going along. This is just Joe Cook, my cameraman and producer, and director of photography and color and everything else, camera operator. He's very much, we're a small crew. And he, this shot here, by the way, very important, the spin around the car. I will mention this shot later. It was very important in the edit. But the shots like this are the shots that I've had other filmmakers come up to me and say like, hey, how'd you do that? And I told them, I was like, it's literally just Joe with a Ronin and me running through a field that we did not get permission, by the way, to be shooting in, which, is another way that you keep price down, but it is the risk you take, which will, again, I'll come up later about why that shot was important and why that field ended up being a problem. But it's literally just, we were like, okay, we're just going to go hit these country roads. It will just be me, maybe Joe, and sound will, we know we're going to do a lot of that in post, but so that's how you get those shots. We were actually, we had more freedom because we were so small. It wasn't a restrictive thing. It was sort of like, well, we can swing the camera as much as we want. That's not really an issue. It's as long as it makes sense and we can do it, let's do it. So, I think camera movement is essential. I think a lot of people early on are scared to move the camera, but for me, movement is kind of that cinema. Whenever I'm on a set and they've done a lot of statics, the crew's like, okay, and then you do a nice move. Everyone's always like, ooh, and I think there's something about the camera moving that people like, and I like it too. It shouldn't always be moving, but in the case of this, that's where that came from. The idea of just kind of running, but just running in a field. That's all it was with a Ronin. So you can do that with any kind of jib at this point. I mean, there's all kinds now that aren't just Ronin, but they're getting better all the time. The cameras are getting lighter, and it's mostly a matter of will, I think, and creative, whatever, being flexible with your script and creative with your locations and things like that. All right, so I'm at the car wash now. Also, didn't pay for this. This is just like a low-level car wash that was near my apartment at the time, and it looked good, and it had the right look. So we parked the car. I already had the blood on it. Joe and the camera assistant just kind of sat in the other end of the parking lot and got that wide shot, and then stepped in, and we got these inserts, and it took 10 minutes, and that was, all there was to that. Again, having the smaller crew and just kind of running around town, as long as you're deliberate with your shots, that can look really good. You don't have to go wild. The one thing I will talk about is camera, not just movement, but the type of movement. Right now, I made the decision in the first act to have a lot of Steadicam, a lot of very smooth movement, a lot of Ronin shots, a lot of following, a lot of just like going. So a lot of tracking in. Not at this point, obviously I'm saying this. Well, there's a small push in right now, actually. So yes, there's always a little bit of movement because he's on the go. So even a shot like this, tiny bit of movement. And that I would use to contrast with the third act, which is all handheld. That was sort of being when shit's really gone crazy, the idea, that's when everything's at its heightened and craziness and the most wild. So you want the camera to reflect that. And so, you can do these run around town things without always having to do handheld. That, that's a choice. I'm not against handheld. We use it in this movie. But a lot of people I've seen do we're just going to like set it on a tripod and get a wide shot, and that's really boring. Or they're going to just do a handheld, and they're going to be, long lensing, shaking, movements that don't make sense. They're just kind of in a hurry. So I wouldn't recommend that either. I would just sort of smart planning, finding locations that you kind of know, like there's no one around here. That car wash, there's never anyone there. There's no employees there. You can kind of, mostly know we can park here for 10 minutes and do whatever we want and get out of here. But, also like we're not like, if the cops show up, we film this mostly in Dayton, Ohio and Xenia, Ohio, and the kind of like outskirts of those towns. And, if someone saw us with a camera, most people are like, oh, you guys are making a movie? Cool. They weren't like, where's your permit? So that was that. So here's another example of a shot. This is Cherry House. This is a tracking shot. Another, once again, just like it's clean movement. It's behind. It's tracking, kind of on the go. And I guess I should talk about Cherry House because it's sort of in breaking down the movie and how the structure was done. The movie was structured around what I knew we had as a production crew and as my friends and in life and everything. So Cherry House is the producer, Sean Mangan, who is responsible for a lot of the movie in terms of locations and in terms of getting everyone there. He was a big help in terms of just everything. He was kind of my major partner throughout the whole thing. His family owns Cherry House Cafe and run Cherry House Cafe. It's a nice little dive. If you're ever in Beaver Creek, Ohio, you should check in. They've got amazing cookies, good burgers. But they own that, so that was sort of the decision. You're like, okay, well, I know he has a diner, so I guess that means the character works in a diner. those sort of decisions, that's exactly how that was made, in terms of scripting. So literally at a script level, I was thinking about it in terms of, like, what do we have? What's a location that this character can work in that I know is visual and that, will make sense and that we can just have for free. And speaking of free, I'm about to pull into my mother's house, and it's my mother's house in the film, and it's also my mother's house in life. She still lives there. She, this is the front yard of the house. I knew we would be using a variety of friends and family houses, and working that stuff into the script and working my own life in a way into the script. So this is my mom's house. I'm walking in here, getting rid of evidence, and obviously, you can shoot your mom's house for free. And I knew also it would help contrast his apartment versus the other places that we were going to go. And I liked that it revealed his background in a way. It showed that he came from a certain level of comfort and from certainly upper middle class. I cannot lie that that's my mother's house. So yes, that is the house I very much grew up in. And I knew that it would reveal something about the character, especially in contrast with his actions and how much money is in his account, and seeing where he came from, and also knowing that would work thematically, while also knowing that it was a free location. So again, those are the two. That was basically the balance of the whole thing. Was like, okay, this is the locations we have. How can I write a story around all that makes sense and is thematically consistent and engaging and, entertaining, hopefully. So, So shots like this is just Joe, me, and a few other people on the crew, helping out, like, with other things where it's just we're hanging out. That doesn't take any time. We shot this on weekends. And so I guess, so while we're, talk, I guess I should talk about how we filmed the weekends, because it would make sense now while I'm in this. The way we filmed the movie was everyone was working throughout the week, Monday through Friday. And what I was doing at the time was I was working as a journalist at a news station, a TV journalist, or technically an online journalist. But so what I noticed there while I was working there was that they had an equipment room full of gear that was bought for commercials and bought for some of the creative stuff that they had to do with other shows that they had. And basically this equipment was sitting in the back room collecting dust, and it was only being used every once in a while. And I had a previous position at the building where I'd used it more and was very much aware of how inactive all the equipment was. And it was all very, it was full airy light packages. There was the Ronin, the camera came out of this, the lav mics, like, a lot of the stuff we had. The reason the budget was so low is that we didn't pay for any of the equipment. So not only that, but Joe, the camera operator and DP and everything, he works at a place called the Camera Department in Cincinnati, which is a camera rental house and general camera facility. And so he had access to, if we needed a car mount, or if we needed the lens packages that I was talking about earlier, or if we did need something particularly special, we could rent it for cheap, or Joe just was able to, knew it wasn't being used that weekend, and they were flexible and nice enough to let us use stuff that, was not being used. So basically that was one of the major ways that we saved money, was by never having to pay for any of the equipment. Now, this meant, though, I will say that I did not have permission from the news station to use this equipment. So that meant that on Friday afternoons, I would get a cart and go into the room. I had a key to the room. I was allowed in the room, and I was allowed to take equipment out of the room. But basically on Friday afternoons, I would go in there as early as possible and load up a cart with everything and try to go out to the parking lot and load my car up as inconspicuously as possible. And, like, I had worked there for a while and no one really thought anything of it or had a reason to think anything of it. I was bringing it back, so the whole thing was, I knew who to ask. I asked the right people. There were certain people I couldn't ask, but I knew to ask certain people who I was like, hey, I know that you're taking this equipment out for, your music video shit or whatever you're doing on weekends. So if I give you a list of weekends that I need this equipment, will you turn a blind eye? And they were like, yeah. So, that was very much how that worked. But that meant on Friday afternoons, I was getting the camera out and all the gear and loading it into my car and racing off to wherever our first shoot was, probably for the day. And then at the end, on Sunday nights, the whole thing was, they were like, you can take the equipment, but by Monday at 8 a.m., it all has to be in here, because we do this thing every Monday at 8 a.m. that we have to have the camera, we have to have a few of these things back. So sort of, I would be literally we'd be filming late into the night, and I would get the equipment back, and I would get there at like 4:30 a.m., and I would load it up in the middle of the night and drop it off in the equipment room, drive home, get 2 hours of sleep, and then drive back to work, to work at full day shifts. And that's sort of what I did for 2 months. And looking back on it now, it's exhausting, and amazing that we did it. Sometimes we laugh about, thinking it would be easy, but it's how we kept costs down. We shot in our friends and family homes. We shot in country roads. We shot, just in places that we knew we had control over, or at least could get for very free, or wouldn't be bothered out in the public, for the most part. And that was essential for keeping costs low. The other thing was, speaking of Cherry House Cafe, they were able to be caterers for the movie. So a lot of the food, a lot of the meals were taken care of by the restaurant. They were, so gracious with the food and the, snacks and everything throughout. We bought other stuff, but that was a huge cost-cutting thing. So obviously not everyone is going to have access to, those types of things. But if you're creative enough and ask the right people, I think that those are the ways that you can cut costs. Befriend the people who work at the thing, ask to borrow the thing that's not being used, rent the cheaper thing, shoot in your homes, shoot in your friends' homes, and just get it made. That's really the most important thing. It's just getting it shot. And having it in a place, especially your friend's house or whatever, like that means you have more control. That means you have more time to light it. That means you have time to do a scene and rethink the blocking and be like, oh, this isn't working. When you're under the gun of a major production with, tons of people waiting around, you only have so much time, you only have so many setups, so someone only has that day. It can be the stress is, incredible. But for this film, we shot for 28 days, I think, total, which is, compared to a lot of independent productions, like, incredible. But we had a lot, the leisure of time, because we were so low on costs, in terms of really just having film school friends who were crewing in terms of sound and helping with camera and all that. But most of the cost, this stuff right now, I'm if you're not watching, I'm doing the change Coinstar thing, and even that money, we cashed it there. We're at a Kroger. We cashed it, and that money helped buy food that day. We bought, I think, dinner with that money. So, that was we used that money. If you look, this is me walking out of a liquor store. It is not open. They are closed. But most audiences aren't going to be looking for the open sign or notice that half millisecond that the drive-through door is down. They just see the big sign that says liquor. They're looking at me on the phone, and you just have to hope that they're looking at the right things, So you have to hope that the story is doing its job, and these small things aren't being noticed. So yeah, that was literally, we just went to the liquor store one Sunday morning before they opened and grabbed that really quick with the Ronin. Now, this is one of my favorite shots, actually. This is me walking into Buzzcut's house. I'm very proud. We just got lucky with the wind. There's a lot of that. But this is another version of a shot, actually, that changed. The shot used to follow behind me and go up the stairs, but we did like 16 takes of that. And then at the very last second, Joe was like, hey, can I just go lower for one? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we did that, and it looks great. That's one of my favorite shots. And this is also one of my favorite shots. That's a painting called Heroin Babies, by the way. No one's brought that up yet, but that's a painting of of babies doing heroin. This is one of my favorite shots because it's so complicated and no one knows it. If you look, it's me crossing a room, sitting down. You can see Dylan silhouetted. It's pushing it on me while it gives me time to kind of deflate for a second. It's the first time I'm, waiting for someone, and my feeling was that anytime I had a moment of quiet, it was just not going to be, good. So I would just immediately go dark. But yeah, and then it tracks here into the kitchen, and that doesn't look very hard at all. And I know that audience members watching it don't really give a shit at all. But we did like 20 takes of that. It took very hard to get the timing down, to get the shadows to catch right. But it's that I love those simple shots, those kind of simple one-ers, and I wanted to do a lot of one-ers. And if you're gonna make a movie, you might as well, especially if you don't know if you're ever gonna make another one, you might as well do all the stuff that you've always wanted to do. So this scene between me and the Dylan playing Buzzcut in the kitchen is probably a good reason to talk about one, why I am cast in the movie, and one, why Dylan is cast in the movie, and kind of the ethos behind those decisions. The reason I cast myself in the movie was because of scenes like this. I knew we weren't going to be using fake drugs. It is fake heroin. I will say that it is fake heroin. But this is just dabbing. I knew this stuff just looks crazier than it is. Anyone who knows what it is, it's nothing too serious, but it has a nice visual flair, and you get a blowtorch in there. But I knew I would be doing. I was so fucking high this day. This was one of the days where it overtook me. I'm really fucking stoned in this scene. But here's the thing. I'm a stoner, and I am the kind of stoner who smokes so much that this is not a brag, but like I am a high functioning stoner. I can operate motor vehicles. I can, fly planes. I can, do just about anything a normal person can do. It unfortunately doesn't have that effect on me. It's, but I can do scenes. I can remember lines and not get lost after I've smoked a bunch. And I knew that about myself, and I knew that we were going to be using real drugs and having to do multiple takes. So, there was that element of, okay, so if you're reading the script, that means the main actor has to grow their hair out, grow a beard, then be willing to shave that off, and then get punched down a hill, thrown down hills, or thrown around houses and smacked around and smacked into cars, and scream and cry, and just do all kinds of stuff. It was going to be a really demanding role. And I didn't have any money to pay anyone. And I'd done a few shorts where I don't want to, or I'd been around some shorts where I sort of had felt like, he said so humbly, I could do that. But I had acted, and I had felt very comfortable in front of the camera. So that there was the sort of the logical, just like saving money of it all. But there was the sort of like, there's a lot of like kind of dangerous stuff that I'm asking people that I would be asking another actor to do, and I can't pay them. And I can't promise the safety concerns that might, a bigger production might be able to offer. So that's really where it came down to, was for me. Sorry, if you hear my dog, he's scratching right now, shaking his ears. But yeah, that's really where the production came down. That's where that decision came down to, was knowing that I would throw myself harder into that wall than most any other actor, because I cared the most. And truth be told, this is a very, very personal story for me. I have struggled with addiction throughout my life, and in various ways, and to various extremes. And this was a way of talking about that and dealing with it a little bit. It didn't start that way, to be honest. That sort of came later. But yeah, this scene here, this scene has my daughter's favorite line. I do have a daughter. My daughter's 19 now. I did have a daughter very, very young, and so that part of that. So I was such a creative writer that I changed it to a son in the movie. And yeah, so shots like this, you can't, you never know that an actor is going to be able to do a hit like that. I was sort of like, I can do that, and I know I can do that, and then continue to function throughout the rest of the day as we need to shoot. So, but yeah, this line, he says, "Yeah, dude, that's a triple fucking cheeseburger," and that is what I wrote in the script. And I don't know why. It sounded very funny to me. And on the day, he's like, okay, I'll say it, but let's try a few others. And so we did. We tried it. And then he's like, yeah, you're right. Triple fucking cheeseburger does sound better. And so we settled on that. And I think it's very funny. And apparently my daughter watched this movie with all of her friends. And that was their favorite line. They're like, we all love triple fucking cheeseburger. So I'm proud to have brought that into my loved ones' lives. I don't know what it means really, except it's a lot is probably all it really means. This scene was a reshoot actually. We did some reshoots. This part is not a reshoot. There's, if you're looking for continuity errors, there's leaves on the trees in this shot here, and there's not in the wides because you know what you shouldn't do is shoot over a period of weeks in the fall in Ohio. That's what you shouldn't do because you know it's not going to be consistent. The entire look of the world will change day by day, hour by hour, second by second. So it's not ideal. So we did have to take that into account a few times. We weren't like, shuffling leaves anywhere, but a lot of it was taken care of in the color balance and post and all that. But there's a couple moments like that where if you look right there, no leaves on those trees. It was shot a lot later. Initially, the other shot was done in a parking lot, and it just didn't have this long. I wanted it to kind of have the length that this has of me driving away and being able to do the slow fade. It just didn't have that in the parking lot. So while we were doing reshoots, I asked if we could just do another U-turn somewhere else. So that was. I'll talk about the casting process now because I was about to talk about casting Buzzcut, which is very different than casting Caitlin, who's playing Lola, and casting casting Daniel here, who's playing Wyatt. So you can cast for free, is what I would say. You don't have to pay your actors till you're making the movie. So if you have a script and you're trying to do a lot beforehand, you can make the movie. You can start production or pre-production without having really a plan. You can sort of just start telling people, hey, I'm making a movie. And what that means is you can start setting dates. That's what I found was really key was you set a date, you just start setting calendar dates and meeting those dates. And slowly but surely, if you're wise enough, things will come together. If you start telling enough people like, hey, we're going to make this movie. Hey, we're going to do this thing. Hey, we're going to be there. They'll show up. So casting, so you can post a casting notice and be like, hey, we're not shooting for 8 months. Actors are used to that all the time. And give yourself all the time in the world. That is what I would say about the casting process, is start as soon as possible, because on an indie movie, when you can't pay a lot of people, you're just going to need to give yourself a lot of time to find the right people. Because, you're going to run into a lot of stage actors, especially in local productions, who haven't done a lot of on-camera experience, and they tend to go very big in their performances, and you're going to have to whittle them down a bit if you cast them, or kind of talk to them a little bit about the differences. I've had that problem where some of them just truly couldn't tone down their expressions. And but Caitlin doesn't come from stage. Caitlin is a movie actress. She does a lot of horror movies. That's really been her background, or her primary focus has been that. Not that she wouldn't like to do more. I know that she'd love to do more, and she should do more. But right now, I cast her because I knew Lola was kind of the key role to casting. That was the one I knew I was going to be doing it, but Lola was the other one, and that was certainly the one we spent the most time on. And it came down to Caitlin and this other actress who was a little bit, I would say, rawer as an actress. She didn't have the experience, but she looked probably closer to what I had pictured when I was writing the film. And she had this wild red hair, and it really looked like it would pop on camera. And Caitlin, this sounds like an insult, but I told her this. I said, the issue I have with you is sort of that you're too pretty. You're a very beautiful, good-looking girl, and this is supposed to be a recovering heroin addict, and she is very skinny, and she didn't wear makeup, and I think she was really excited to do that, to strip away a lot of that quote unquote the pretty stuff, and wear hair just up in a bun, and wear regular clothes and sweatpants, and that being the kind of point of the character. And so I think she was excited to do something like that was a little different. And so she had the training, and that's really what it came down to, was sort of okay, she might not she might be pretty, but one, that's never really been a problem for movies, is that, oh no, the actress is pretty. That's an obstacle I'll deal with. And the other issue was that she had more training, and that, like, you just have to at a certain point be like, go with the better actor, go with the person who on the day has the experience of being on set, has the experience of doing multiple takes and being able to bring it multiple takes. And it's not just like some of these, especially the fresher ones, are going to try and just go on instinct. But, there is something to have someone who is trained. This is, so we're going back. We are now establishing, for those of you not watching along, that Wyatt and Lola are both arriving back with what we will find out is a box of some sort. It will eventually be revealed to be the plant of Lola's mother, who has just passed, and they have put her remains in a tree that can be planted in the soil of a tree that's to be planted, which is a service that is real. So Wyatt actually, Daniel was a local actor out of Cincinnati. His response when I asked him to be in the movie he was like, "How did you find me?" Because he's like off doing Sam Shepard plays down in Cincinnati. He's not really like, he doesn't care too much about the movies, or that was never his primary focus. But he's so great, and he had the voice, and he had that look, and even that look right there. He's got the hair. Like, he reminded me of I say this with all compliments to him, but he sounds like a hound dog. In the best way, the kind of like Jimmy Stewart in American Tail, Fievel Goes West, that kind of like, oh, well, he's just sort of got that thing, which I don't know why that was important to me, but I guess it was. Oh no, hold on, my thing is freezing. Hopefully the refresher. Okay, there it is. It's gone. You're fine. So he just sounds so great, and he's really ornery, and kind of was always teasing me, and I didn't quite know where I stood with him. I didn't know if he was like calling me a dumb ass, like, because he thought I was a dumbass, or if he was just like teasing me. And I think I've now learned that he was mostly teasing me, and also I think a little suspicious at first. He's like, "What is all this?" But as it went along, especially this shot of them walking along with the leaves falling behind them, I think that this is when he kind of started to trust me. I remember we did get very lucky. This shot is one of my favorite shots. It's just all one. I like things that are in oneers that aren't necessarily like fancy extreme oneers. I like that classical style of visual language, and I like the simplicity of it. So we just got really lucky that the leaves were perfect and falling and brown and golden, and this is just right time, right, got lucky. This is good plan. I wish I could, say that we had all the money in the world to blast the sun into the sky, and this was shot at night or whatever. But no, this was getting lucky. I mean, we knew it would be the woods, but we didn't know it would be very pretty. So this waterfall, it wasn't all fun and games making this movie. This was probably the most challenging day. That scene, not the one you just saw, but the one of them parking in the parking lot. The day was supposed to be them parking in a parking lot that was by a pond, and it was a very beautiful location. It was going to have a great sunrise. It was going to be just a majestic shot. I was so excited to get it. And as soon as we arrived at the location, it had flooded. The entire parking lot had flooded. The entire park had basically flooded. Now, what this meant was this was one of the very few locations. This is a public park. This is one of the very few locations that we did get a permit to shoot in, because this is actually right next to a hiking trail. So we knew that hikers would be there. We knew that eventually a park ranger might come kick us out. And I also knew that this was going to be a lengthy scene with two actors needing to do multiple takes and have emotion. So this wasn't one of the times where I thought like, we can just show up like the car wash. The car wash thing is like, we can show up and it's just me in a car spraying it down, and then three buddies are standing by with a camera when we can be out of there in 15 minutes. Like that's one thing. But if you have a scene like this that is in some ways, the heart of the character, the heart of the movie, the moment the movie stops to like really have a human moment. Like you want to make sure you're not going to be kicked out of that location. So with that in mind, we did have permission to be here, but it flooded. And not only did it flood, we had forgotten Wyatt's jacket, and there was something else with the prop, I think with the prescription pill bottle, like things that you'd never think are going to be a problem. But basically, someone with props, I was like, okay, can we get the prescription pill bottle that she's supposed to take a pill out of? And they brought me one that looked like it was for a fucking horse. It was like the size of a half gallon of milk or something. I was like, what is this? They're like, it's for pills. And I was like, well, she's not a cow. Like, what, what is this for? And it was just one of those miscommunications where you don't think you need to like clarify exactly what kind of prescription pill bottle you're asking for, but weird things like that happen. And if you don't check, you'll show up on set that day. And, craziness ensues. And so somebody's running to get his jacket. The location is flooded. But the only good thing that has come out of this is that we knew that the waterfall would be flowing. But after creating kind of a series of rope steps, impromptu rope steps, and getting a location and getting everyone down there, we were able to get everyone safely down there eventually and do the scene. And I'm really proud of the scene. And, I think the actors are really proud of the scene, and I have to shout out Sean, my producer, who early on in the script, when I was like coming up with the basics, I had mentioned that like, oh, Lola's probably, she's probably out there with her boyfriend, and he was sort of like, I don't know, a boyfriend's pretty boring. Like I kind of know what that is. Is there anything else that she could be out there with? And I was like, maybe she's out there with her grandpa? Why? Okay, but why? Okay, why is a young woman out hiking with her grandfather? And at some point, I had heard about the tree thing with that. Maybe there was some commercial for it, or it was in a podcast or something. But I'd heard about that, and I think that sort of triggered something like, oh, they're out there for a funeral, and that just unlocked everything. And so those types of decisions, I'm so grateful for, because now it gave what seemed in the first act of the movie to simply be a kind of on-the-run movie about an asshole, a selfish asshole. I'm glad at this point reveals that there's a little bit more to it than that. The movie's not just this mean, brutalist thing. There's some level of sensitivity. And I also just, I loved directing scenes like this. Now, editing it was about getting the pacing right and getting the flow of the waterfall. That was crazy with the, the dialogue and, the it not always being consistent in the background. But for the most part, it worked. And right now they're the hands. I didn't direct any of this. This is just them. And that's why I think I can be a little bit more proud of it, or not feel like I'm just bragging, because it's really about them. And this is, I hear so much about how much people love Daniel and how much his performance is one of their favorites, and she's so good in the movie. And I know that she's very proud of this performance. I think, I know she has a lot of fun doing the horror stuff, but I think she's not often given a chance to do a scene like that. And I, was so happy to give her the chance to do that. And I was so happy to have that scene in my movie. So this scene was about, he's about to be shot. My friend, Patrick Ferguson, he is the one who did all the effects in this movie. And, a lot of this scene was for me definitely about direction. I knew it had to make sense about where they were in regards to the bullet and how that came through. And I think it makes sense. But in terms of just like what screen direction, where are they looking? Where is the bullet coming from? How are they not seeing him? And I think it makes sense, because I guess it's hard to talk about right now. I'm talking about so much, but yep, he just got his neck exploded. I'll be honest, I kind of wanted it to be a bigger more graphic explode. I wanted it to be nastier, but it works as it is. And they were really into it. And this was one of those scenes where this day, I know he had to be somewhere. So there was an actual time crunch on this day, and there was an effect that we sort of knew, like, we're going to only have time to set this once, because he doesn't have time and we don't have enough daylight to clean him up and redo it and do it again. So this was really one of the, like, we have one chance at this. And it was great. And I remember Daniel saying that his lesson that day was, as much as you think about it and prepare, once action's called, whatever's going to happen, it happens. And that's true. And thankfully, it worked out. We had 3 cameras running on it, and because I knew we were going to cover it from come back to it. But all this stuff here, all this cutting back and forth of her right there to me there to her here to where they were when Wyatt just got shot. We shot in, I think, 6 or 7 different woods. All right, so a shot like this, I do want to talk about. She's running through the field and just came and is smacking up against the car. Now, here's the problem with not getting permits for the places you shoot. So she was not there the day that we first did the opening. That was just me and the crew. First weekend stuff of like me alone running and on my own. So we get there to this field, we find it, we're like, perfect. This is the perfect length. There's a parking lot here that perfectly matches the description in the script. It's kind of a remote. We're good. So we film it. I do that early scene of me running through the dead grass, and then we come back like 2 weeks later with Caitlin, and they have plowed the entire field. Like, it is completely flattened. There's not a single bit of grain or whatever it was left there. So it just it looked nothing like it did. And they, had no reason to maintain it because they didn't know we were there filming or we weren't supposed to be. So we were like, what do we do? And thankfully, the one good thing is that as an editor, I knew that we had that 360 shot of me getting into the car. And so once that happened, I was like, oh, in the edit, I can do that 360, and that will realign the direction of the frame to left. So if we shoot her running, we have these trees in the background. We can shoot her from that direction, and we don't have to shoot the same direction that we filmed me running. And those trees are enough of a distraction so that you won't see the ground. We'll just shoot her higher. So we were able to get around it, thankfully, because I, was editing in the film, and that was one of the blessings of just sort of doing the math of being creative. But yeah, you're going to run into problems where it's like, oh, the location has completely been destroyed or it's been changed. We ran into that stuff, like flooded locations. We had to panic to go find that other location, that other parking lot, just one that was nearby that was above ground. And you're filming in the fall, so you really only have so many hours of sunlight. And yeah, you just have to, that was the day I would say that it was the only day I think I lost my temper. My version of losing my temper is I think I screamed at someone like, didn't you read the script? And he said, yes, of course. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm just like terrible. I'm just like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I accused you of not reading the script. So that was I remember my big like, read the script. I remember being very angry about some detail that was getting screwed up. And it was stressful. And but your job that day in those moments as a director is sort of, hopefully you have friends around you who are calming you and, giving you what you need to sort of like get readjusted, and they're helping you solve these problems. And, and that's where the teamwork comes in, and that's where the trust comes in, and people being like, yeah, I know you're mad, but it's okay. It's okay. This shot here, by the way, it's a oneer. Another oneer that was not planned on. This shot had like 6 different shots of coverage. We shot it a bunch of different ways. And at the very end, we were getting the shot, and then it was a tight on this actress, Joanna, playing Cassie Kozak. She just kind of leaned in, and Lola kind of creeped into the shot. And and as I was watching, I was sort of like, oh, like, let's just do one more of those. And we will just have her come in a little bit more, Caitlin. And she did, and it was perfect. I was like, okay, the whole scene is so intimate now with just this one shot without cutting. And that was something that I knew instantly on the day. I was like, that's going to be that oneer in the edit. Like, I knew that for sure. This scene here, we're shooting this scene in the exact same location that we filmed me pulling over to park and smoke a joint and see the blood on the car. We reused locations constantly. All of this was basically my producer, Sean, his family who owns Cherry House, also lives on a farm. And that farmland, some of it is wooded. And that was the stretch where we used me as a camper firing the guns, because we knew in order to fire that was a real gun. We needed private property to fire that on. We couldn't go fire that in a public park, and so we used their woods, but also nearby. And so Sean's mom's and dad's house became kind of this base camp, and we would go into the woods and film those sections of me running around, vomiting, shooting, all that stuff. But there was only so many trees, so that we couldn't film it all there. So it was like, okay, and there's no waterfall there. So that's where coming up with like 5 or 6 different locations for filming the trees. It was wild. That was one of those things I could have never expected. And structurally, yeah. So this is me coming back into the movie. Wolf coming back into the movie. This scene was longer. I think I was originally I was doing some drugs, underlining that a little bit more. Really love this shot. The red. The car really pops. That's my mom's car. It was bought. Sadly, my dad died when I was 2 weeks old. He had cancer when my mom got pregnant, and so he passed. And I think she's told me that she got insurance money, and that this was sort of her like, I want to try and feel better car. And I don't think it ever did make her feel better. But I grew up my entire life with this unused sports car in the garage, and it got used on occasion. It's actually not that fun to drive, but it's kind of a pain in the ass, but I was glad it got used in the movie. It visually pops a lot. It finally was pulled out of the garage. I think it's now dead, unfortunately. I think we killed it. It was a 1986 Firebird. This nightmare sequence, I don't know that it's in the script, to be honest. I think it came. No, that's not true. It is in the script, but it was not in this spot, and I don't think it knew what it was going to look like. And I just kind of wanted to hint at the horrors of what was coming and what had happened. We're in these crack houses that are on the outskirts of Dayton, or downtown Dayton, and her pills and the panicked running and the fear and this violent moment that she's just witnessed. I wanted it all to kind of conflate, and hopefully that be enough to have her need to go get her pills and get out of the car and be on the road. This section, and again, this is the same parking lot. If you look behind her, that's exactly where I was parked. And even if you go off to the side of the road, there's another shot that we got of the car, just, another establishing shot of driving, so we're literally just getting entire chunks of the movie in this one spot. And right around, like if you would go half a mile down the road is the other parking lot, where all the chase happens and the blood with the smacking of the car and pulling away from Lola. That's just like literally another mini gravel parking lot, half a mile down here. We're basically a mile away from Sean's parents' house, which is our base camp. And that has crafty and food and bathrooms and stuff. And it was really just like, okay, this weekend we're doing the Lola and Wyatt stuff in the woods. Or basically, I'm putting it off, but the way we structured the movie is I knew that each character, for the most part, your buzz cuts, your Marie, the mom, your Wyatt character, a lot of these, Frank, who will come later, Jesse, the nurse, I knew besides me and Lola, all of these characters, for the most part, their scenes could be done in a day or two. And so the way we organized it, not buzz cut, but he took a little bit longer. But for the most part, what we did was, it was like one of the major influences on the script was Eyes Wide Shut. Actually, not because of the content of that movie, but the structure of it. If you watch that movie, it is Tom Cruise going to all these places at night and having this, nightmarish experience. And then he returns in the daytime, and everything looks different and has a totally different vibe. And I thought, that's a really interesting way to limit your locations, but give them a different feel throughout the movie so that it doesn't feel like, I'm stuck in the same places. So essentially the idea was, okay, this weekend is Marie. So the mom character. So Kelly's from California. Again, we had enough time to cast that we could find people from around. Some people are local, some people flew in. It was a variety. But that weekend, the only thing we had to pay for was Kelly flying in and Kelly getting a hotel room. And the rest of it was just at my mom's. So it's all my friends at my mom's house with this one actress, and we're in the daytime shooting the scenes like the haircut and the check writing and all that other stuff. And then once the sun sets, that's when we shoot the scenes of me robbing the house and the big fight and me outside in the car and all that other stuff. So it makes the film feel not small while you're able to get a lot in a short period of time. I know a lot of the actors were complimentary about how fast we were, and that was just because we didn't have to move much. I mean, the movie goes to a lot of locations, but if you're actually counting where we are, there's not very many of them. And the basic setup is, first half of the movie is I go to all these places. I'm in the woods. I go to my apartment. I go to Cherry House. I go to Buzzcut's house. I go to my mom's house. And it's established what my relationship is with those, what I've taken from them, whatever. And then this incident, this knife fight that's about to happen, will be the catalyst to send me through the rest of back into the places I just was, these places of my life, but the lights would be off basically, and the situation would be totally reversed, and the extremities of what's happening in those scenes is now different. So it allows us to visually completely change the looks of those rooms. The camera movement inside of those rooms is different. So it hopefully, it limits us as a production, but it doesn't limit the film. And that was really the goal. So this knife fight, I knew that there was going to be something that happened with his hand, or at least with his body. I'm a firm believer in I thought of this kind of as a noir, and I'm a firm believer that if you're going to have a main character who's a piece of shit, you should just beat him up a lot, like let the audience know that they're a piece of shit, or at least a little bit. So one of my favorite things ever is Chinatown, the nose slit in Chinatown, because it's such a small cut, but anyone who has a nose, which is most of us, knows, that pun not intended, that that would suck. That would really suck to have a cut in that place. So a cut like this, I was like, okay, boom, knife in his hand. There's one or two shots. There's one shot in particular here that I really wish we would have gotten. A much more brutal of the knife, really ripping skin. I wish we had that, but it just the limitations of what we were working with. We got that, that's pretty brutal. But we shot this multiple times. We got shut down multiple times by park rangers. This was the one time that they were like, guys, you got to go. You can't be here. And we're like, all right, we're leaving. So then we'd show up like 2 weeks later and try and get the rest of it. And they'd be like, guys, your red car is really noticeable. And we'd be like, yeah, we're leaving. But one thing I got to say, knowing that we shot this so many different days, I really can't tell what bits came from what days, and I really don't know. So I credit mostly to Joe for the color timing. Shots like this, me on the highway, that is Joe sitting in a car next to me. I have the phone on my lap, and I'm basically screaming, all right, speed up, slow down. I'm going into the left lane. And Joe has the camera pointed out the window. He has it on the Ronin to keep it steady. But basically, he's outside of a car and next to us, and we're kind of like coordinating with each other. It looks like I'm screaming, but what I'm really screaming is like, hey, I'm going into the left lane. I wanted scope. Again, I wanted anyone to watch the movie to not feel like they were watching a quote-unquote indie small movie. And I just knew that shots like that were worth the effort of just getting up there on the highway and sticking it out, because I think 5 seconds of that shot really lend a lot of scale and legitimacy to your movie. And once again, like everything was set up, like even the trash being in his car. But it is both the stimulus to remind him that he left a bunch of evidence behind, but it's also what he's gonna wrap his now brutal hand in. And I just thought that was a gnarly kind of idea of like, this is all I have is trash. And so this is the Dayton skyline. This movie is set in Dayton, and it's kind of about Dayton. Dayton at one point was the number one heroin overdose capital in America. We're still pretty high up there. I don't know if that honor remains, but the drug epidemic really hit Dayton hard, and that sort of started filtering its way into the movie in ways that I wasn't even, I wasn't pushing. They just sort of, I noticed that they were there as we were going. So right now, this scene, all this stuff outside. This character, Buzzcut, that's Dylan. This is Dylan's real house, by the way. Like, this is where he was living at the time. He doesn't live there anymore, but this is where he was living at the time. And one of the reasons we chose it was because, one, it actually was his house, and, he was in the movie, so he would be obliging. But also, it's on a hill, and there's a lot of background of the city that you can see. It's very high up there, and I knew it would give us a lot of depth. And... we were doing scenes like this. Cops pulled up, and I was covered in blood, and screaming. And a cop car pulled up, and they were just sort of like, they just gave us a nod and pulled away. And we're just like, they're fine. I'll never forget that. So as soon as he kicks in the door, though, this is Sean's house, my producer. This is where he was living at the time. We split. The outside is Dylan, the actor's house. The inside is Sean, my producer's house. And... the doors matched perfectly, thankfully. It just happened. But so this is basically all happening in Sean's house. So once again, if you're keeping track, this entire movie was filmed in my mom's house. The apartment that I go to was my sister's apartment at the time. So basically, we're in public parks, my friend's house, my mom's house, and my producer's family's restaurant and woods that they live on. So that was, that was how we shot it. We just knew we didn't have to pay for any of these locations. We knew we would have a lot of time and freedom to, move stuff and, whatever. And everyone, could be comfortable because we were, we were in our own homes for the most part, and we kind of knew the restrictions of the space and, basically, that was my chair. If you caught that, that was not me farting. And that was my dog shaking, not me farting. All right, so yeah, I'm screaming. This was such a great day. This was the final day of principal photography. I remember the crew not really knowing how big the scene was going to get in terms of the screaming. Obviously, like, they read, hey, there's screaming in the script. But I remember the first take coming through the door at like screaming, just in agony. And I remember it kind of clicked everybody into we're doing that scene. And like even Dan, the sound guy, he was like, oh, okay. And he was like playing with his knobs. It was great. And this is, this was the big set piece of the movie. I wish I could remember. I just remember thinking it would be cool. I knew I wanted to get him in that Chinatown syndrome. I knew I wanted something brutal to happen to him that would throw off the rest of his day, but not something like getting shot. I wanted it something to be just a little bit more like distinct, So, and that led to this, and that kind of body horror element of it. I do like body horror and gore, and I think it's fun. Won't do it in every movie, but this just felt like a good, intense scene that I hadn't really seen before. And okay, so this is the hand. The hand is an actual silicone reproduction of my hand that we literally just split into half and stuffed with all kinds of brutal meats and bloods and such, and stitched it back together. Again, and that cost several $100s to get that made, that hand. Again, basically what the movie was like, okay, what can we get for free, and what are the priorities that we know we need to make the movie better? So we knew that we would need car mounts at a certain point because that would be worth the rent, because so much of it was going to be in the car, and we didn't want to have just shitty handheld whatever shots. We knew, it's like, okay, so for one weekend, let's get the car mount out and do all the car shots. That type of mentality. And again, so using the hand, that was like, okay, we know that the hand is going to be one of the most important visual things. There's going to be close-ups on it. There's going to be a real emphasis on it in this major part of the movie, this kind of violent crescendo of the movie. And this is Pat, the guy who made the hand. He is the one gurgling blood right now. And that was sort of, that was in the script that there would be someone draped and coughing blood, and Pat was like, I'll do that. He has this jaw thing where he can dislocate his jaw. And that's why the like inhaling there looks excessively like he's got a big mouth, basically, is what that amounts to. And I didn't realize at the time, but if you look at him, you can see that we bloodied up the sheets and we wanted it to look wetter, so we were pouring water onto the sheets while he's got a rope around him. And we didn't really realize at the time that we were waterboarding Pat. But it turns out we were. And these are the things that, your good friends do for you when you're making movies, is they will allow themselves to be a little bit of waterboarded. They won't be compensated in finances, but, they're on cinema forever. So thank you, Pat. Thank you for the hand. Thank you for the effects. And thank you for waterboarding yourself for my movie. I really appreciate it. All my love. This scene, where I'm crying and all that, this was the stuff where I really don't know. This was a desperation, I think, really. It was, again, I knew I was going to have to be the one to throw myself into the wall harder than everyone else. So it was like, all right, well, when it's time for your breakdown, just, have a breakdown and go for it. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be scared. Just like believe in the moment and trust yourself. And for the most part, I feel pretty good about it. And this scene, I thought, I thought when I read the script, or when I was going to look at the script, that was the moment that we got changed the most, or it was just I was editing and figuring it out in the edit. But actually, it's really not. It's pretty close to what I wrote in terms of like, he looks over and sees this. He looks up and sees slow motion shots of his mother and a child, et cetera, et cetera. But otherwise it was pretty exact for what a crazy scene it was. All right, so Lola's back. She just got dropped off by the police, which are obviously just the sounds of a car outside and red and blue lights that we have flashing. Some cost-cutting effects right there. Once again, here we are. We're back in the bathroom that we were already in earlier. So another primary influence for me was Blood Simple, the Coen brothers' first movie. Again, the main reason being that I was counting locations. I was looking at the movie and I was like, okay, so they've got a bar, they've got his house, her apartment, that place, and country roads seems to be the rest of the movie. And so I thought, oh, okay. So, and I don't want to keep sliding the mumblecore like one location first movies. I mean, they're totally fine, but that was just not something I wanted to do. I had a little bit more ambition to do something bigger. And so I just thought, well, okay, like let's not do one location, but like 5 seems pretty manageable. So here we are. We're back in the same bedroom that she woke up in, and now we're about to go back into the same kitchen that we were in earlier. And that was kind of the mentality. It's like, okay, we're gonna get here on these locations. The day scenes, like right behind her is where Wyatt was taking his sip of coffee earlier, and like so it's like, okay, so we've got this house. This is Pat, the guy who Pat, the guy who made who's just waterboarded and made the hand. This is the house he lives in with his wonderful partner Daisy, and this is the house that they stay in, and we shot there. So once again, we were in friends' houses, and this house is a block away from Sean's house, where we were just filming the hand surgery. So all this, we're not actually, as much as we were kind of running around all the time, the movie was pretty contained to just like our local friends' houses and small crews with just the essentials of like, okay, today is a day of me creeping around Cherry House. Who do we need? Okay, we just need me, Joe on camera, and Dan on sound. And everyone else can go home. And we were still able to do that. And we had days like the hand surgery day where it was like, okay, we need all hands on deck. We need a lot. I think that was the day where there was probably the most moving. Yeah, that was the day, this later section with Jessie, the actress, Lola is there, Caitlin, Brian, who plays Frank, is there. Everyone was that was the most actors in a scene at one time that required kind of the most coordination. But for the most part, everyone's pretty restricted. And that did, I will say, if I have any not regrets, I knew it was sort of a function of the story. It's that I knew that the character of Wolf would not be stopping to explain himself very often. He would not really be giving monologues about life or why he's done the things he's done. And I just didn't think that felt right. And I just, that didn't seem right for the movie. And also as a practical function meant there would be more scenes of me by myself, not talking, less dialogue, more action based. And, I do, as a regret, think that there's some heart that gets lost, especially from my character. But at a certain point, I guess I have to acknowledge maybe it doesn't matter. He is kind of the villain of the piece, even though he's ostensibly the arc is his right now. This stuff. So so right now you can see the movie has suddenly gone handheld. At post surgery, the movie is gone. All of the stuff now is going to be handheld. All right, so this is the introduction of Frank. I love this guy. His name's Brian. The story of Brian is that he auditioned. He was one of those people we were auditioning early, as I said. So he auditioned and flew in, and I was like, wait, what? He's flying in for a single audition? He doesn't need to fly in. We're a low budget thing. We can't pay him. There's no guarantee he's going to get this part. Like, this guy does not need to fly in. And Sean was like, he's flying. I don't know. He insisted on it. He said he's coming. So we were like, okay. And I felt a lot of pressure. Like, man, I don't want this guy to think that, I'm going to cast him just because I feel obliged to, because he did so much just coming. And he came, and I felt bad because I didn't think he was right for the part. He was auditioning for Buzzcut, and I didn't think he was right for it. And a little loose, and said sorry, so we had him read for another thing, and I was kind of like, I don't think he's right for that either. But he kept messaging me like in the months following, like, hey man, I'd really love to be a part of your project. Really love to. And I felt bad because you really should take advantage of people who want to be a part of your project, because there's going to be a lot of people who actively do not, or who don't care. So if somebody's around you who's like, hey man, I'm really excited by the stuff you're doing and I would love to support it, you should keep those people around. And what eventually happened was Brian sent me a video months later that he had filmed in his kitchen with other actors, and he did a scene as Frank, and it was great. I was like, holy shit, he's gotten better. And he was perfect as Frank. And yeah. So once again, here I am back at my mom's house, darkness, the same location, same, the actress, we only had to pay for her that weekend. So in terms of like splitting costs, it's like, okay, so this actor comes for this weekend. We're just in my mom's house. We have the one hotel room that we have to get for her. Everyone else lives locally. And we're going to do all the scenes with her this one weekend. And then I will return the equipment on Monday morning, prep what we're going to be doing the next weekend, having already somewhat prepped it, but doing all the last minute stuff of prepping, and then going and doing it again. And we did that for several months. And so this scene was, I would say, the hardest on me as an actor-director. Because this scene is very much pulled from my life. I had a tough relationship with my mom for a while. It was because of a lot of the bullshit I was pulling, a lot of the money stuff and drug stuff, and I wasn't in the military, but I was a good dad. I will say I was always a good dad. I don't want to. That was always very important to me. She was always kind of the thing that kept me grounded as I was before I would get too wild. I was always, the weekend would roll around and it was like, oh shit, I gotta buckle up, and I love being a dad. That's the major difference, I think, between me and Wolf. But otherwise there was so much of it. It was just about me, kind of all the shame that I felt about how I'd been. I wanted to make a movie when I was so young and I just hadn't done it yet. And I felt so lost. Yeah, in this scene, I remember it was longer. I accused her of more, but then shortly before, like a week before, I sent her another copy and I said, hey, I stripped away a lot. I made it a lot meaner, a lot more direct. And she flew with it because Kelly's amazing. And we got through it. And that was the second weekend. And I remember once we got through that, see, this scene, this is great. This scene is me sitting in a car, and I love this shot. And I really love this movement here is actually just an adjustment from Joe. It wasn't a planned movement, but I love it. The reason it makes me laugh is I remember that being a day where it was like we had done the Kelly fight, and I was so proud because I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. We did that. Cool. And then the next day we did some more stuff, and then the nighttime rolled around again, and I was like, okay, now we need to do the shot of you leaving the fight, devastated. I was sort of like, oh my God, I forgot about I got through the fight, but I forgot that I had to still do the devastation part. I forgot about that. So I literally had this like, oh no, I have to have an emotional breakdown later tonight. Which, that's sometimes the trickier part of juggling too many balls. This scene here looks great. I'm very happy with it. They are basically circling a parking lot. We have a car mount, and it's not very safe to drive when you have a light mounted to the thing, and they are actually driving, which again, not the safest thing to do, but it's something. So basically, the windows are rolled up. I'm in the back. I'm laying in the back seat with the sound gear. They're mic'd up, and the camera is mounted to the car. And basically, we're just doing a bunch of different setups. We did this scene a bunch because there was just a lot of coverage that I knew we needed to get. I'm not big on having coverage, but certain scenes you just know, like, it'll be better for us to have a lot of options here. And this is basically us just in a small restaurant strip of parking of restaurants and kind of small shops and a big circly lot with we knew that there would be a lot of lights being picked up in the background and reflected. So we hoped that would do a lot of the work of not actually being on the highway. Because, so the actors are never actually really exceeding 15 miles per hour at any point, and they're basically just doing a circle. But, that's how you do a shot like that without green screen, with relatively safe conditions. You're just driving slowly in a circle in a lot, but you can still have a good driving scene and it looks all right. The thing I think about with this scene here was it's a great example of why it worked out that it was me in the cast and we had such freedom, because this was later in the shoot schedule, but we got rained out. It was just supposed to be an exterior day. And it rained out, and we were sort of like, oh, well, shit. Like, are we done for the day? I was like, what else can we do? And Sean's like, well, like Cherry House is closing soon. We can probably go shoot that. And I was like, okay, let's go do that. And we were able to just kind of get the cars, drive over to Cherry House, and wait for them. There's literally like the entire crew of the staff is cleaning up and closing for the night. And we're like, hey, we're just going to be back here in the corner with the lights off. Don't mind us. And they're like, okay. So that was that's the freedom of working small. This shot here with the city in the background is an example of why we wanted that location, because hills are great. And if, gives you some depth in the shots as much as you want, as much depth as you can get is usually preferable. And, also I wanted it to be a distinct house. I had heard from a couple people that when they saw the movie, this is the shit that's great. I did not ask him to do anything. I just said like, hey man, just like go around the car. And he's like, I'm gonna dance around the car. And that's what I love when actors do that stuff. That's the best stuff. And so the setup and payoff is, you have this establishing shot earlier, and you want to take longer to establish me walking into the house so that a shot like this of them returning has more impact. And yeah, so here we are. We're back in the loop. This was always kind of in the scripting phase to make this not feel too writerly, not too overdone, to just make it feel like small town. This of course could happen. How many dealers are there? But yeah, that was always in the function of the script, was Lola, they will separate at the halfway point of the knife, and at some point in the third act, they will come back together for some last, confrontation. That was sort of always the original intent. So those earlier scenes, we've set up that Buzzcut is a heroin dealer. We've established, the clientele he's dealing with. And now you get these scenes, and again, we're just right back in that exact same room, which is in the house of Sean, my producer's house. This is actually his bedroom. We stripped it bare, and he hated us for making it look like a, shitty, drug den. But, that's the exact shot there that I was doing, probably doing the bong shots earlier on, so just sitting there. So now we're back in this room, and, just with it being night, we're able to make it more evocative and give it the light and stuff. And, Joe did such a beautiful job lighting this movie. I haven't talked enough about Joe. Joe is really for me, the key ingredient in terms of getting this made, because I knew I needed it to look like a really good movie. So this moment here, I really want to talk about an amazing thing with actors. Brian, the line is, "If you need anything, holler." That was all I put in the script. What Brian does here is he steps in, slowly comes down, and does this. And he just milks the line for all it's worth. Now, sometimes you don't want this. Sometimes you do not want an actor just cheesing it up. But in this case, I was just like, holy shit. This man has just made one line feel so much better. And in ways that's the beautiful thing about actors, is they can do that. And so immediately we restaged it. We reset it so that the camera, we could see him do that better and get these shots. And so these are some of my favorite shots of the movie. And there's nothing like a bed without any sheets on it. There's just nothing like it. Also, you can't really get a good look. She has really terrible pants throughout this movie. I told her specifically, I was like, I'm going to give you some really ugly leggings. And she was just like, thanks. I was like, yeah. I just think I had dated a girl who's had just terrible fashion taste. I'm not Mr. Fashion, but I particularly was like, you have a very bad taste. And so she was sort of on my mind when I was like, hey, could you wear these really just ugly leggings throughout the movie? Yeah. So needles. Yeah. We just saw a shot of needles. This is another thing that you wouldn't think of as hard. It's very easy to get big fat needles, but when you come from a city where there's a drug epidemic, getting needles is actually quite difficult. I had to go to 5 pharmacies to give them a variety of lies, and they would eventually start helping me with the lies. They'd be like, all right, what you need to do is tell them you're a farmer. Tell them you have pigs. And they started, telling me these things. And what eventually did it was I had to tell them I was a clockmaker. And the glue was, and the parts were so small, and the glue was so fine that only a needle could apply it. And this was advice given to me by another pharmacist who was like, I can't give it to you, but here's a lie you can tell to another pharmacist that will work. And it was a ridiculous system. But eventually that's how I got through. This scene here was part of the reshoots, and it's one of the things I'm the most happy about reshooting. One, it brings back the liquor bottle that I got earlier. And two, it established that the flight was coming more. I realized in the earlier cut that the momentum he had for getting out of town felt like it didn't make sense because we didn't really know where he was going, or if there was any time limit, or if the time limit had dissipated. So suddenly the time crunch didn't feel as vital anymore. So it was like, okay, I have to reestablish a new countdown clock for him to meet, for him to be in a hurry again. And so all this behavior of him being angry and needing to rush out of there, I wanted all that this all just made it feel a lot better to me. And yeah, just that one scene. And again, being a small production where it was literally just a matter of hey man, months later, I really need to do this scene. Do you mind if we park our cars outside your house and just do another scene? They're like, yeah, man, we're just in here playing Call of Duty. Don't mind us. And so that's the beauty of doing it this way, that there is freedom in that kind of low level production. So yeah, I felt like a scene like this without that previous scene, I'm very angry and kind of in a hurry. And it feels to me like it makes a little bit more sense to why he's so I gotta go. I really need to go. Because beforehand, I think it was still just you're coasting off the I shot somebody earlier stuff, which, that's a good reason to need to go. But, you hopefully you get a little bit more. And also, it's another, just another, another obstacle, and that you want to keep putting in the way of the character. And this is something as a writer I wish I got more out of. Frank gets very suspicious about the hand because he's heard the hand story. And he was great. Here's what happened. I cast him. He finally, I was like, wow, he got really good, and he seems right for the role. And he wants to be in this movie. That's worth something. Let's cast him. So we cast him, and then 6 months go by, and what happened was he got cast in a bunch of different other projects, and he got better. So I liked him already, but then in the meantime, before we started shooting, he did a bunch of work and got even stronger as an actor. And I know we had a lot of fun. We just had a lot of fun. And this stretch of the movie was some of the most fun I had as a director, because the scenes that I really like doing are these kind of, well, not always, but emotional, serious scenes. I like working with actors. I want them to feel like they're getting a chance to do something that's more than just like, go here, pick that up. You want there to be like a range of things that's happening. And so these moments here, there were these scenes in this room in particular, between her and Frank and her and me, where it was just like we were operating at a whisper. It was kind of like, okay, cut. Caitlin, lay there. Okay, you're good. Okay, we're gonna go again. Brian, and you're kind of talking like that, and the crew knows to kind of stay away, and you're just sort of like I was literally like crawling on the floor, just like whispering things into their ear and keeping everyone in a mood. And that was just some of the best stuff. I was just like a pig in shit. I was so happy. I'm so happy that I'm about to kill her, about to stab her with a fucking needle. This scene, that was a matter of timing. There was other versions where I looked at her longer, and it actually got creepier. And the scene, I have to say, I never thought of it this way as we were filming it, but in the edit, it became very clear that it was a rape of sorts. Just this sort of like plunging a phallic object into her forcefully against her will, like it had, and covering her mouth. I always knew it was going to be brutal, or that was the hope was that it would be brutal, but there's rape aspects of it that I don't think I planned on, that seem to come out now more, that, now that I watch it. But, she did great. These were all really great scenes. I think this might have been her last bit. Possibly this was probably her last day. No, it was not her last day. I take that back. But I will say, I wanted to get shirts made that said, no one be nice to Caitlin, because everyone had, every day that she had was just terrible. I felt so bad. She just was like, okay, today I'm going to get overdosed. Today I need to cry. Today my grandfather is going to be murdered in front of me. Today I've just been dropped off by the police. All that stuff. This was literally, okay. So this was just me driving fast. This is Joe sits in a car next to me and I drive fast. You don't need a lot of crew to do that. The trains, oh my God, the trains were this whole thing. I write them into the script and you're like, okay. I have all kinds of thematic reasons about these trains that I can go into, but practically speaking, about filming with trains, this is some of the most proud stuff I am, because one, I thought it would be easy. You find out when the trains come, and then you shoot around. You just schedule your day around that time. Sounds easy peasy, but it turns out that Homeland Security does not give away trains schedules because it's a matter of national security. They're scared of getting bombed. So basically it was like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go to these train tracks. There's definitely shots of me pulling up to this thing. There's shots of, me, with the train not there. So we'll go there, we'll get those shots, and hopefully we get a train. And we got a ton of trains. It was great. We got very lucky with that. And so we had like 4 trains come through. We had a lot of time. to do that. And this reverse shot here with the blinking lights, we had shot this first so we could time the way the lights were reflecting on me. We shot the reverse of that in Sean, my producer's parking, or in his driveway. So yeah, this shot here, this was shot in his driveway. And those lights that are in the distance, I actually know are the hospital lights of the hospital that I'm going to dump her body at later. So this is really just, piecemeal. You're just like putting this puzzle together and racing back to here. Brian would say, he's like, oh man, that was so exciting doing the stunt that you just let me do. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, man, I ran down the stairs and got into the car and drove away. I was like, that was a stunt? And he was just like, yeah, man, like those wet stairs, those, whatever. Like I could have been, someone could have been driving. And I was like, oh my God, I had no idea how much danger I was putting you in. So I need to be better about that in the future. But yeah, so here I am about to shout out to Drew. They are an amazing collaborator. They did an amazing job on the movie. This scene. So I'm carrying her body. Caitlin's a very tiny woman. But you can only do so many takes of this before the person's dead weight will get to you. I just remember by take 12, I was like, okay, we're done. We've done enough of this. And here, same thing, driving, just, all right, everybody, let's Joe, get in the car. Me and Caitlin, we're going to drive. Use a red light. Like, it was very simple. You don't need a lot, especially these days. Again, emergency, this is also probably one of the shadier things we did. I knew that this is a block away. Once again, we're not driving far from location to location. I basically just drove a block to this location, and I knew that the big emergency thing was right there, and there's a neighborhood that we're basically in someone's front yard right now. And I was like, okay, this part of the movie's handheld. Dump her. It's dark. Maybe they won't see us. We're not actually dumping her. So, as soon as she stands and they see she's all right, whatever. Okay. And boom, we've got that. Okay, let's go. Let's run away. That was Etho. Certain things you're stealing. You have, that's sort of what I would say is know what you can steal. There's going to be some risks to that. Hopefully as an editor, if you're doing that, you can find workarounds. Otherwise, if you need to be in a location for any length of time and doing important dramatic scenes, you really do need to have control over those locations. So make sure that you're shooting in that. And as we come to the end here, I guess I should summarize by just saying the way we were able to make this was filming weekend to weekend, so that all the crew members who I was working with were able to continue their day jobs, and I also did not need all of them every weekend. If you're specific about like, okay, this is what we're doing this weekend, so that means we're not going to need special effects. So Pat, you have the weekend off. You can come if you want, whatever. But there's a few of us that are going to be here every weekend, but for the most part, the actors are going to be changing out. This weekend this is just a weekend of Phil driving around and doing that stuff and doing him walking into places by himself and a lot of just like that stuff. So it's just going to be the three of us for the weekend. And I can only say that the script was designed that way. You have to design the script that way to know that you have those things. And don't be scared to give yourself a few challenges, and also just give yourself a year. That's what I did. Once the script was done, I was like, all right, we're going to give ourselves a year. We're going to tell everybody that next September we're going to start filming this thing. And basically in that time, we did camera tests. We figured out the camera. We started casting as early as possible. The actors were cast like 6 months before we started filming. But like I said, there's so much you can do that does not require money right away. There's ways that you can save money by cutting costs in terms of, I think just setting expectations for everyone. What people appreciate is honesty. If you tell them, hey, we have this and this and this, and this is what I can give for you, and this is what you should expect from that day. And if you are true to that, they will not be mad at you for the most part, unless you're like screwing up. For the most part, they'll be like, yeah, I just want to be in the movie. I'm happy to help. Don't abuse that power. Be nice. Let's try and have a fun time while we're here. And you'd be surprised what people will do for you. You're going to get told no a lot. I was told a no by a ton of things. Let me tell you, this police car that's on camera right now is about one of the hardest things in the world to get. That took about a year. This scene was done in reshoots as well because the police car was so hard to get and do the things we wanted it to do, and letting an actress drive it, etc. So find a camera that you can afford. Find a person who is good with the camera, like regardless of what the camera is. You just want to find the most talented director of photography you can, who's excited about making a movie. And the promise that you can make to them is, hey, you will be the director of photography on a feature film. And not a lot of other people are giving you that option right now. So it'll be a little bit of work, but it'll be a hell of a resume builder. And that's sort of the pitch you gave. Joe was excited about that. He was like, look, you have a plan. I've read the script. The script works, and you seem to have an executable plan for doing that. So I'm going to trust you. And so that's how that happened. And based on that, especially with everybody else who was also film students who were kind of helping crew, the same thing. They were like, okay, you have a plan. You're not just asking us to show up and we don't know what's going on. So you do need to make the plan, and make the plan around things that you can control. Make it, and just make the best. Yeah, use your resources as wisely as you can so that you can make the best movie you can. Don't shoot for too much that you can't control. And I took some notes. I'm trying to think. Yeah. I mean, the cop car was a pain in the ass for all kinds of reasons. Patricia, that actress, she was in a short that we did called Bucket. She was very forceful, and I just kind of sent her an email. I was like, hey, I have a nothing part for you as a cop, but, it's a part. You're a very forceful, strong actress, and I would love to, have that vibe in this role. So that's where she came from. So again, a mixture of like casting people from who we knew and had previously worked with, and knowing that scenes like this were going to be happening. If you look outside, it starts to rain. That's fake rain that we hoped would help kind of with the transition into the waterfall. This waterfall shot was really the catalyst for me keeping Lola alive. In earlier drafts, she was going to die for a while. And I had this shot. I was like, well, what could the fun? And I had, Lola returns with another tree to plant because now Wyatt's dead, but she's back and she's healthy and she's looking at the waterfall. And I had this shot, this exact shot that's up right now. Her back, the plants are in frame. Her back is to camera with the waterfall. And I had that in my mind. And I sort of just couldn't get it out of my mind. And that was very much where I was just like, okay, I think that's how it has to end. Because Lola was going to die, and there's going to be more versions of a more proactive attack. I think I was concerned that she's not proactive enough throughout. But, I'm happy with where it ended up at. And, so that's the movie. It's over. The credits are rolling now. So that's my advice. You should definitely do fundraisers and Kickstarter, all that stuff. Make a cool trailer with test footage. Have a script that you know is shootable, and give yourself time to figure it out, because it does take time. But if you give yourself a year, and you're like, okay, and you give everyone enough time, be like, hey, in 6 months, can I use your house? They'll be like, okay. Or they'll say no, and you still have enough time to go find another house. And, if you plan it so that like, okay, on this weekend, I only need these people. On this weekend, I need these people. This is the big weekend that I know I'm going to need everybody. So like, let's just make sure that all that's taken care of. And honestly, it's a scramble. It will always be a scramble. It's a big moving circus of like things that happen, whether that's parking lots getting flooded or props being forgotten or, anything else. And I edited the film myself. I did, the sound mix. That again, I knew I would be doing all that just to save money. And that was to save money and for myself to learn that stuff, because, it was important to me that I knew how to do that I would be able to do it in the future, so that every step of the way, whether that's through distribution, through festivals, through learning, how that stuff works, it was important to me in terms of the songs are up. I was the one who had to learn how to reach out to artists and acquire these songs that are used in the movie. These are all local Dayton artists, and for the most part, and reaching out with them and dealing with that. I learned all of that doing this movie, and most film schools aren't going to teach you that stuff, unfortunately. They're teaching you like kind of the politics of being on set, but the actual practicalities of like organizing spreadsheets and all that other stuff, that is not really to their best interest. And so that's the movie. The movie's over, and there's so much more I could have said, but it's only 90 minutes, and I hope I said a few things that were useful. I will happily be in touch with anyone, whoever wants to reach out and has questions, cost-saving methods, or just curious how things worked. I hope this was of help, and I hope you enjoyed the movie. Thank you for listening. Thank you for any support you've ever given, and I hope you enjoy the movie that we are currently in the middle of shooting now, and will hopefully be available in the next year or two. Thank you, guys.